This is a letter that I've written to my Israeli friends, as well as my Jewish friends around the world. And I just wanted to speak to you on this Shabbat, 20 days after the most brutal massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, and let you know that I have been witnessing your pain and have been sitting with it each day since 10/7 and feeling it for myself in solidarity with you. And while I've said a few things in the last few weeks in support of Israel, in my heart it's been clear that unless I use my actual voice to tell you that I see you and support you, that I would be acting as a coward. So to those friends, this is a message from my heart to the people in the land of Israel that absolutely changed my life in so many ways during the 2 years that I was lucky enough to live there. The last few weeks I've thought a lot about my two grandfathers who both boarded ships and set sail to Europe, one in 1942 and one in 1945, to defend Europe from the Nazi regime. My father's father, the grandson of an Orthodox Jew from Prague, spoke Yiddish and was a medic in the Battle of the Bulge. He received the Silver Star from pulling more than a dozen men out of burning tanks. And whenever I asked him as a child about the war, he simply responded, "That war is too dark to speak of once it's over." My other grandfather, a farm boy when he was drafted, told me that the war bled the farm dry, but that's what it took to defeat the Nazis. So now in 2023, a lifetime after the global war that engulfed my grandparents' generation, I've spent the last few weeks watching as details of this modern day pogrom come out, details of the filmed and televised brutal slaughter of women, children, and unarmed civilian men in the south of Israel, living in farming communities there. And if you know me personally, then you know I'm the importer of Tu-B-60, Israel's national spirit. So I work with Israelis day in and day out. They're my business partners and friends for life. I've spoken to them in the days after the massacres, and one of them told me of Costa, Tu-B-60's logistics manager, who barely escaped the Peace Festival in the South with his life. Hearing how my business partner told me of how Costa miraculously escaped the festival churned my stomach, and when I was listening to him, hearing the story, I could just feel the blood leaving, my limbs. That was a festival where people were coming together to celebrate peace, and many were also in deep psychedelic journeys. Men had their genitals cut off while they were alive. Their girlfriends were raped in front of them and then shot. My other business partner, an Orthodox family man, lost literally dozens of friends and family in the southern kibbutzes, and some are still being held hostage in Gaza. I've been thinking of Israel and all of humanity constantly over the last few weeks, often, to be honest, losing myself in memories of my experiences living in Tel Aviv. And in these times, the memories of my grandfathers, who were teenagers when they left their families and boarded ships to cross an ocean so they could fight the darkness of the Nazis and prevent them from taking over a continent 80 years ago. Their memories have haunted me that I've done nothing more than repost Instagram stories of other people's voices in regards to this war, and the heartbreak of the Jewish people all over the world who watch as people celebrate the deaths of Jews in capitals across the globe. And the other day I was speaking to an old friend who's now back in the reserves in the IDF. We hadn't spoken in a long time, but I still do remember a conversation we had many years ago when he told me of his best friend from childhood who fell beside him in battle during the last war in Gaza in 2014. He had a new tattoo on his arm to remember his childhood friend by. And now in 2023, almost 10 years later, he waits as his fate hangs in the balance, and I had no good words to offer, knowing that the gravity of his situation and the weight of sadness that hangs over Israel at this time. I simply asked, is there anything I can do? And it felt like an impotent question. And he simply responded, "Tell the world who Israel is." And those words hit me because Israel gave me so much. So that is the least I can do, is to tell my little sliver of the world what I know of who Israel is. So this is my love letter to the people of Israel and Tel Aviv, a city that gave me back my joy and helped me remember what it feels like to be alive. This is a love letter to all of my cherished friends that I met in that city and across Israel, who threw their doors open, invited me into their lives and into their homes. It's the very least I can do to tell them that I remember the gifts that all of you gave me by letting me feel alive amongst you. It's the very least I can do to honor you in this time of sadness and trauma, which is not just the trauma of the last 3 weeks, but the compounded trauma of thousands of years of being hated and hunted across the world. A history of persecution that culminated in the Holocaust, which occurred when Jews had no home to return to. I landed in Israel for the first time on October 8th, 2014. I knew almost no one, but the people I did know were charismatic and full of life. What I didn't know on day one was that the whole country of Israel was full of charismatic people who were full of life. I had intended to stay in Israel for only a month before moving on to somewhere else, and needless to say, I never moved on to anywhere else. I stayed in Israel for another 2 years, only coming home for short stints to see my dog Alcide, because within a week of living in Tel Aviv, I was so intoxicated by the sheer eros and presence of the Israeli people that I simply didn't want to leave. It was like no other culture I had ever been around in all of the years I'd spent traveling. As someone who's always been a secret history nerd, it fascinated me to ask each person I came to know what was their family history. How did they end up in Israel? Some of their parents were born during the Holocaust or shortly after in Europe. Some of their grandparents boarded ships alone as teenagers, leaving the ports of Morocco during the mass exodus of Jews from the Arab world after Israel declared itself a state in 1948. And I have to make the point that I cherish the rich diversity of my home country, the United States. But this was a level of dense cultural kaleidoscope that I'd never seen before. The people I were meeting were Polish, Yemeni, half Syrian, half Iraqi, Hungarian, Moroccan, Ukrainian, Jews from India, France, Germany, Sweden, Libya, Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Oman, Jordan, the United Kingdom, Australia, South Africa, the United States, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Canada, Ethiopia, Eritrea. Some, of course, had never left the Holy Land during all of the incursions and expulsions that occurred in the previous 2,000 years. And they were all living in this small place the size of New Jersey, all speaking Hebrew, a language that had been dead up until 100 years before. Within 2 weeks of moving to Israel, I somehow developed an entire group of friends. I'll never forget this, and to this day, the rapidity with which I was accepted by all of these new vibrant and diverse people still shocks me. I was going out every day and night, meeting new people and having the most fascinating conversations of my life, not talking about gossip or celebrities or complaining about my Amazon packages being late, but instead I was having deep conversations about real life with people who, as I began to understand more day by day, were acutely aware of the fact that any peace they got should be richly cherished, enjoyed, and lived into the max, because they never knew how long it would last. I was meeting Jewish Americans and Europeans who had experienced so much anti-Semitism back in their home countries, whether it be subtle or to the overt levels of violence, that they would rather be in the most hated country in the Middle East because at least they could be with people who understood them, valued them, and didn't want them dead. Hearing all of those stories made me sad and brought up a lot of the shame I've always carried as an American, knowing how short we've fallen here in our own long quest to heal from all of the barbarism America has committed, both to our indigenous people and slaves stolen from Africa, and all forms of oppression that continue to exist in the United States. The only thing I can say that is hopeful on this topic is that in the US, we are gravely lucky to live in a vibrant democracy where we can continue to argue amongst ourselves with the hope that the discourse betters us and avails us of the other perspective, so that we can truly see and feel how much we all deserve to thrive in this life, and then develop systems to make it so. And that was what I found in Israel, a vibrant democracy. You could call it a country of people who love to argue in the best of ways. And some seem to argue for the sake of arguing sometimes. And if you, if you're one of my friends in Israel, and this might be you, know that I've learned to love it about you. They could argue about every facet of Israeli life. From the politics of the country to the politics of the dog beach being next to the religious beach in Tel Aviv. They could argue about the route of the most fabulous gay pride parade that the world has. Takes place in Tel Aviv. And even a friend argued about the route the parade took as it meandered through the streets of Tel Aviv before opening onto the expanse of the grassy knolls of Charles Clore Park, which is a beautiful park that hugs the boardwalk of Tel Aviv. They could argue about, of course, who had the best hummus, the best fried barbunia, where we should go out that night, which of the many beaches along the coastline of Tel Aviv should we sit on to soak up the sun and protect our ears from the people playing mat caught all over the beach. And, over time, I came to realize it wasn't arguing at all. Not like the arguing we do back here in the States. These Israelis were engaging in vibrant discourse, the discourse of life. They were in the river of life. But life in Israel isn't easy. It's expensive, taxes are high, and to make it in the middle class means that you're most likely working your ass off all the time. But when you're not working, you are living. Full-blown Matthew McConaughey style LIVIN. And in those 2 years in Tel Aviv that I was living there, it flew by like a fantasy. I was gifted the opportunity to begin recovering my vitality. A vitality I had lost due to years of binge drinking that I used to ignore unhealed parts of my own self that I didn't get to start healing, unbeknownst to myself at the time, until I got to feel alive in the ways that only Tel Aviv can make you feel. And I credit so much of the realness and authenticity of the people with spurring that healing in me. You won't find much small talk when it comes to Israelis. They don't have time for it. They get right to the part of friendship where they ask you about your true self, and then they tell you about their true self back. They are travelers, they're chefs, they're caretakers. They will change your tire without a shirt if you're lucky. And they will take you on a tour of the city on the back of their motorcycle at sunset. They'll make you a bed on their couch. They'll drive you to a festival in the desert and watch the stars with you. They'll take you to their favorite secret beach. They'll take you to their home at their parents' house for Shabbat dinner or for the holidays. They'll invite you to their friend's wedding. They'll pick you up from the airport. They'll stay out with you till 7 a.m. and go straight to breakfast with you after and not judge you when you order a bottle of champagne, because I used to do shit like that. They'll carry you on their backs to the car if you lose your shoes drunk in the sand. They'll clothe you. They'll feed you. They'll listen to you when your heart is broken, and they might even break your heart. But if you do, it'll be worth it, because when they love you, they are right in the heart of life with you, feeling the aliveness of the moment. And that aliveness was what began to heal me from so many years of unacknowledged sadness I was carrying, which at the moment is of no importance. But I say it just to give credit to all of the incredible people I met during my time in Israel. You were medicine to me. Seeing the way you went about life to me was medicine. And sadly, I have no medicine of value to offer you back in this time, other than to say, thank you for letting me come alive in your presence. To me, the ineffable ecstasy of living in the present moment so fucking often next to you. Because back then, when it came to living in the present, I was like a baby giraffe stumbling helplessly. But when I got to see how you all danced in it, Eventually, through the intoxicating osmosis of your presence, I was able to learn how to dance with you. So to all of my Israeli friends whose hearts are broken in this time, who've lost friends or family, or may have to risk your own life to protect your homeland, so that the Jewish people who have been abused by the world for so many thousands of years can have one place to live that feels somewhat safe. I send you my love, and above all, I just want you to know that I see you, and I acknowledge that you are survivors. Survivors who are descended of generations of survivors who are at your backs now. I am in your debt for the rest of my life for the awakening you created within me, and I will never forget you. I pray that I will see you again, someday across a Shabbat table or at your favorite secret beach. Until then, my heart is with you. And my heart is also with the innocent Palestinian people who are suffering unimaginably now. A people whose welfare, safety, and prosperity I absolutely pray for. When I used to sit on the beach in Tel Aviv, I would sometimes wonder what was the beach like in Gaza, just 100 miles or so to the south. I would always smile when I would see Arab-Israeli couples holding hands and walking down the boardwalk in Tel Aviv, or Arab families barbecuing at the park near the beach with their children playing nearby. I lived for a bit of time in Jaffa, an Arab neighborhood to the south of Tel Aviv, or in South Tel Aviv, and I was grateful to buy meat from the halal butcher, who we always smiled, even though I couldn't speak the language. And I was always grateful to sit at the shisha shops that hugged the side streets near the old port. And in those shared times, there was peace. So I pray deeply that the world can come together to help the Palestinian people build a society that is not governed by a murderous death cult like Hamas that steals from their people and strangles their opportunities to prosper and live freely in this life, as they have every right to do. And that may be the challenge of our lifetime as a world society now that we can communicate so easily. How do we hold the full picture and history of this land? Can we spare the attention span to scratch below the surface of understanding to comprehend why there's no peace in the Holy Land right now? So much understanding will be needed to begin healing, so that lasting peace can be found, and above all, freedom can be created for both Palestinians and Israelis. So if you listen to this, God bless you.